What if I told you that one of the ocean's most feared predators isn't actually a single animal at all? What looks like one creature floating on the surface is actually thousands of individuals living together as one, and they can't survive without each other. The Portuguese Man O War has terrorized beachgoers for centuries with its venomous tentacles that can stretch over 100 feet long. But here's the thing that will blow your mind. It's not a jellyfish, and it's not even a single organism. It's something far stranger, far more alien, and far more fascinating than anyone realizes. Welcome to the bizarre world of colonial organisms, where the line between individual and collective becomes impossibly blurred. Today, we're diving into one of evolution's most mind-bending experiments, an animal that isn't really an animal, but thousands of tiny creatures that have given up their independence to become something greater. The Portuguese Man O War, or Physalia physalis if you want to get scientific about it, has been fooling people for as long as humans have sailed the oceans. Sailors named it after 18th century Portuguese warships because its gas-filled bladder looks like a ship's sail catching the wind. For hundreds of years, we lumped it in with jellyfish because, well, it floats, it stings, and it looks gelatinous. But in the last few decades, marine biologists have uncovered something that changes everything we thought we knew about this creature. Let me take you back to the moment this discovery really started making waves in the scientific community. It was researchers at the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute who began using advanced imaging techniques to study these creatures up close. What they found was absolutely shocking. Under the microscope, what appeared to be one animal was actually revealed to be a colony of specialized polyps, each one a separate organism, all working together in perfect harmony. Imagine if your heart, your lungs, your brain, and your stomach were all separate creatures that decided to team up. That's essentially what's happening here, except these polyps can never separate. They're born connected and will die connected. This isn't cooperation like wolves in a pack or fish in a school. This is something far more extreme. These individual zooids, as scientists call them, have become so specialized that they literally cannot survive on their own. Each one has given up the ability to be a complete organism in exchange for being really, really good at one specific job. Let's break down this living spaceship of the seas. At the top, you've got the Siphonophore. That's the gas-filled bladder that keeps the whole colony afloat. This isn't just a balloon, it's a living polyp that has transformed its entire body into a float. It can actually adjust the gas mixture inside to sink or rise in the water, which is wild because that means the colony has some level of control over where it goes. Dangling beneath that float are the dactylozoids, the stinging tentacles that can extend up to 165 feet, though 30 feet is more common. That's longer than a blue whale, just hanging there in the water like invisible fishing lines of death. These tentacles are packed with nematocysts, those spring-loaded venom capsules that fire faster than a bullet. We're talking 700 nanoseconds from trigger to injection. A single Man O War can have millions of these microscopic harpoons ready to fire. But here's where it gets really weird. These tentacles are individuals. Each one is a separate polyp that has completely given up everything except the ability to sting and catch prey. They're like specialized soldiers who have forgotten how to do anything except fight. Then you've got the gastrozoids, the digestive polyps. These guys have no tentacles, no ability to sting, no way to catch food. Their entire existence is dedicated to digesting whatever the dactylozoids catch and sharing those nutrients with the rest of the colony through a connected gastrovascular system. They're basically living stomachs, and they're completely okay with that. And finally, you have the gonozoids, the reproductive polyps. These are the only ones that can produce the next generation of colonies. But here's the kicker, they don't reproduce sexually in the way you'd expect. Recent research from the University of Hawaii published in 2019 revealed something fascinating about how these colonies form. When a Man O War reproduces, it releases larvae into the water, and these larvae are actually complete, individual polyps. But as they develop, they begin to bud off clones of themselves, different types of clones, each one destined to become a specific type of polyp. It's like if you started as a single cell and then grew your organs as separate, genetically identical twins of yourself, each one specialized for a different function. The colony isn't born, it's assembled, piece by piece, all from one original founder polyp. Now you might be thinking, okay, that's weird, but how do they coordinate? They don't have a brain, right? And you'd be absolutely correct. There's no central nervous system, no command center, no brain calling the shots. So how does a collection of brainless polyps act like a single, hunting predator? This is where the science gets really trippy. A 2021 study from researchers at Vanderbilt University discovered that the Man O War's coordination comes from something called a nerve net, a distributed network of neurons that connects all the polyps. It's less like a brain and more like the internet. Information travels through the colony in waves, and decisions emerge from the collective rather than from any single controller. When a fish brushes against a tentacle, the signal ripples through the nerve net, and multiple polyps respond simultaneously. The tentacles contract to reel in the prey, the gastrozoids move into position to receive it, and the whole colony tilts its float to maintain balance. Nobody's in charge, but somehow everything works perfectly. It's like a symphony where every musician is playing their part without a conductor, and yet the music is flawless. This kind of organization has huge implications for how we understand consciousness and coordination in biology. But wait, it gets even more bizarre. Different parts of the colony can have different genetic variations. A study from 2020 found that within a single Man O War colony, some polyps had accumulated small genetic mutations that made them slightly different from their siblings. This means that over the lifetime of a colony, which can be up to a year, genetic diversity can actually increase within the same individual. You are more genetically uniform from your head to your toes than a Man O War is from its float to its tentacles. Think about what that means for the definition of individual. Is the Man O War one organism or many? Where do we draw the line between a colony and an individual? These questions aren't just philosophical, they're challenging the very foundations of how we classify life. The Portuguese Man O War sits in this weird, gray area that makes biologists uncomfortable because our neat categories don't fit. Now let's talk about the venom, because that's what most people care about when they see one of these floating nightmares washed up on the beach. The sting of a Man O War is excruciating. Victims describe it as being branded with a hot iron or having thousands of fire ants biting simultaneously. The venom is a complex cocktail of proteins and peptides designed to paralyze small fish instantly. For humans, it's rarely fatal, but it causes welts that can last for days and, in some cases, systemic effects like fever, shock, and difficulty breathing. Here's what's fascinating from a biochemical perspective. The venom contains compounds that are incredibly specific. They target the sodium channels in nerve cells, causing them to fire uncontrollably, which creates that intense pain response. But different polyps in the colony actually produce slightly different versions of the venom. Researchers at James Cook University in Australia discovered in 2018 that the venom composition can vary depending on what the colony has been eating. It's like the colony has multiple recipes and adjusts them based on its hunting needs. If it's been catching mostly fish, it optimizes for fish neurotoxins. If it's been catching more crustaceans, the venom shifts. This adaptability is something we don't see in solitary venomous animals. It's unique to this colonial lifestyle. One of the most surprising recent discoveries involves the Man O War's relationship with other sea creatures. You'd think nothing would want to get close to this floating death trap, right? Wrong. There's a small fish called Nomius granovii, the Man O War fish, that has evolved immunity to the venom and actually lives among the tentacles. It's like having a pet that lives in a minefield, only it can navigate safely. But here's the twist that scientists only figured out recently: the fish isn't just hiding there for protection. Research from 2022 showed that the fish actually helps the colony hunt. The Man O War fish darts out from the tentacles, attracting predators who see an easy meal. When those predators chase the fish back into the tentacles, boom, the colony catches a much bigger meal than it could have captured on its own. The fish gets protection and scraps of food, and the colony gets bait. It's mutualism at its finest, and it's been happening right under our noses for millions of years. Even more surprising, juvenile loggerhead sea turtles have been observed deliberately seeking out Man O War colonies. They're not immune to the venom, but they've learned to bite off the gas-filled float and eat it without triggering the tentacles. Marine biologists think the turtles might be getting some kind of chemical compound from the float tissue that helps with their own development. We're still researching exactly why they do this, but it shows that even something as dangerous as a Man O War is part of a complex web of relationships. Let's zoom out and look at the bigger evolutionary picture here. The Man O War is part of a group called Siphonophores, and they're all colonial creatures with the same bizarre lifestyle. Some Siphonophores live in the deep sea and create chains of polyps that can stretch over 150 feet, making them longer than any other animal on Earth, including blue whales. But they're not a single organism, they're a colony acting as one. This colonial strategy has been so successful that Siphonophores have been around for at least 540 million years. They survived multiple mass extinctions that wiped out countless other species. Why? Scientists think it's because of their modularity. If part of the colony gets damaged or eaten, the other parts can survive and even regenerate the lost pieces. You can't kill a Man O War by cutting it in half. You just end up with two smaller colonies, each one still functional. This resilience through cooperation might be one of evolution's most successful strategies. It's made marine biologists reconsider how we think about individuality and survival. Maybe being one unified organism isn't always the best strategy. Maybe sometimes it's better to be many things working as one. There's also a climate angle here that's becoming increasingly important. As ocean temperatures rise and currents shift, Man O War populations have been showing up in places they've never been seen before. In 2019, thousands of them washed up on beaches in the United Kingdom, way farther north than their typical range. Climate change is altering ocean currents, and these creatures go wherever the wind and water take them. They're living drifters, at the mercy of forces much larger than themselves. But here's the concerning part. More Man O Wars in new areas means more interactions with humans who don't know how to identify or avoid them. Beach closures have increased, and lifeguards in regions that never dealt with these creatures before are having to learn how to treat stings. Where the Man O War goes, the currents flow, and tracking them helps us understand how climate change is redistributing marine life. They're like living buoys, showing us how the ocean is transforming. There's something philosophically profound about the Portuguese Man O War that goes beyond biology. These creatures challenge our most basic assumptions about what it means to be an individual. We like to think of ourselves as singular, unified beings. But are we really? Your body contains trillions of bacteria that are essential to your survival. You die without your gut microbiome. Your mitochondria, the powerhouses of your cells, were once separate organisms that merged with our ancestors billions of years ago. In some sense, you're already a colony. The Man O War just takes that concept to its logical extreme. It shows us that the boundaries between self and other are blurrier than we'd like to admit. Evolution doesn't care about our philosophical categories.